Now, staying with that story, Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero defended his absence during the handing over of CVs at his office. He says he was meeting with officials to finalise their response to the Usindiso Commission of Inquiry.
So we are now working on developing a proper response, which they are presenting to the mayoral committee on Friday, and then we'll know what type of actions we must take. But it is also important to note that the challenges of the inner city are much bigger than we thought. And in fact, we require as much partnerships as possible, including provincial government. So there are other options we are now looking at in terms of dealing with hijacked and bad buildings. And I think you'll see in the next week, we'll be unveiling a program to deal with those that we already have court judgments, because you can't just not enter an entire building without a court judgment. So at least we've got about 9 court judgments, and we'll be acting on those buildings. And there are solutions.
Now, staying with the country's metros and their financial struggles, the latest Auditor General Tsakani Maluleke's municipal audit report has pointed a bleak picture of the metro's state of finances. The audit report revealed all the metros received unqualified audits except the city of Cape Town. That received a clean report. Now, to help unpack the root of the metro's challenges with service delivery reports, I am now joined by Professor Kedibone Phago, who's a governance expert from the Northwest University. Professor Phago, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like us to start in the city of Johannesburg. As we saw, there's a lot happening there. Of course, there's a lot happening also in the city of Tshwane. But starting in the city of Johannesburg, the ANC has said, you know, the matter of the mayor's utterances, that should be over now. They've rejected the proposal. But those comments are still reverberating across the city, as we saw with that protest to his offices today. A rocky start to his second term as a second chance at being a mayor. This surely cannot bode well.
Good evening, Masa, and thank you for having me. Good evening to the viewers at home. Indeed, I think what you are raising is a very important issue that I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. And it is, of course, informed mainly by the problems in the ANC. I think ANC is actually struggling. And to see this happening in a Gauteng region, and especially in Johannesburg, where the concentration of the middle class is, which means that ideally the leadership of the ANC should be more consolidated and should be more forthright and at their best in Gauteng and especially Johannesburg. It is our the main economic hub in the country. So, and because these things are happening right there, it tells you that the party is in disarray and is struggling to find itself. So the utterances of the mayor are going to be, even in my view, even be a feature in the coming local government, mainly because when we are facing serious problems of unemployment and then the leadership is not considered or viewed to be caring, these things don't go away very easily. So I don't know what they will need to do at the moment, but I think they will need to some of the interventions will need to not just be talking, but they just need to put in measures in place that would be able to demonstrate that the city cares for its residents in terms of the provision of service delivery, but also now, as you have seen, people are now going to start looking more for how they can find employment in the city. And this is going to overwhelm the system because the system is not designed to attract employment in the manner that we've seen with this kind of protest and people coming to give the mayors the seat. So it's going to be a very rocky start indeed.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, as I mentioned, it's not his first rodeo at this job, but is he the right man for the job? You know, Professor, you speak of the ANC in the city also being a party in disarray. But if this is how the man starts his job, Is this basically a precedent that will be set throughout his tenure, or is it a case of how you start is not necessarily how you finish and he should be given more time?
Look, from what we have seen now, Masa, it's very clear that he's not going to. This is not going to end well. This is not a small matter in any way that need to be trivialized. My assumption, my view on the situation that they are facing is that they are already in coalition arrangements in the city. And even with the previous arrangement for Kwamanda's mayoral position that that he took earlier, essentially what we've observed was that ANC was, pulling the strings behind the scenes. And because the current mayor, Mr. Morero, is the chairperson of ANC in that region, so it means that he had more leverage on what the mayor from the very small party was able to do. But now that he is more on the spotlight, I think we are beginning to see the real cracks and the challenges. So it really requires ANC to regroup and come up with very strong, effective, very calculated moves on what is it that needs to be done in order to restore the confidence of the electorates. We see clearly that if the current trends continues in the manner that the ANC leadership makes utterances in the public domain, it is very clear from the election outcomes that we've seen now with regard to the provincial and national government elections that it can only get worse for during the next coming local government elections. So they are already embattled, and the mayor needs to bring in major interventions to demonstrate that he means business and that the municipality would be able to restore confidence to the residents of Gauteng.
And at this point, the residents of Johannesburg don't necessarily know, because he came in with something that was quite controversial as well. And when we're thinking about the unemployment statistics in South Africa, one might think where he would have even thought that would be a good proposal. The ANC itself at the provincial level, the Premier also saying that, no, this has been rejected. We wouldn't even be able to consider something like this. But for the ANC and the political parties that backed Dada Morero to become the mayor again, did they not do a proper vetting process to talk about how do you think we should tackle crime? How do you think we should tackle rejuvenation of the city, or anything else that needs to happen? Surely somebody within that party would have known that he's got these kinds of ideas.
I think your last point there, it's very critical for any leader, especially when somebody is going to be a mayor or a premier or an MMC, or these positions that are on the limelight, because there is no way that is going to be hidden from the media spotlight and from the public domain. So I think this shows the cracks. Even if they do have those processes, it actually highlights the cracks or the disjuncture between what people do during those processes and what they say once they actually get to be in these positions. And this is why I think that it begs for this entire system, the local government system, to put in measures in place and look into the various stakeholders, like what would be the role of SALGA in this regard? What would be the role of the COCTA, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs? Because when local government fails, we cannot only look at the ANC as a player. It is a system that we need to look into and say, why is our system failing us? So a mayor, a premier, or an MEC or an MMC needs to demonstrate very high professional conduct when they are in this type of positions, because it is this kind of conduct and their articulation and in public domain that will bring some level of trust and confidence from the citizens. But when they speak left and they walk right, it becomes something we don't understand as a society. So indeed, I think we really need to go back to the drawing board as a society, but much more from the political parties to say, how do we make sure that the kind of people that go into these positions represent our best interest and they are able to deliver public services?
Yeah, Professor, you know, an unstable leadership, revolving door of mayors. When we're looking at what's going on now, just in Tshwane, there is a looming this upcoming motion of no confidence in that Mayor Celia Brink over there. He also held a press briefing today saying that, look, let's keep the stability of the work that we have done in the city of Tshwane so far. But also yesterday, the Auditor General giving that report on municipalities' finances as well. Neither one of those two cities even got a clean audit. We know only the city of Cape Town got a clean audit. So what is the actual challenge here with metros? Because we've got the city of Tshwane that's got their problems as well as the city of Joburg. And the city of Tshwane is saying, you don't want us to turn into what we're seeing in the city of Joburg, but they also don't have clean audits.
Masa, I think we are really seeing politics of the lowest order in this regard. I think by and large, we're really having politicians who are just out there to do politics and don't necessarily care about the interests of the residents in terms of the of the constitutional mandates of these municipalities to render basic municipal services and make sure that they run efficient and effective administration. So what this means is that when the finances of these municipalities are not in order, we know it is not really anything new that is happening. We know for many, many years that there are so many reports that are out there, and many of these politicians are caught, are involved in malfeasance. And it's quite important that we strengthen our law enforcement system and even the civil society to keep on raising these issues, because the Auditor General for many years, so this is also not new, for many years have been pointing these problems, and they are just continuing unabated at our watch, at our law enforcement's watch, at our president's watch, at our premier's watch. So all the leaders are pretending as if they see what is happening, but I think it's a high time that we find a way of keeping our leadership accountable. But the other issue that you are raising is also quite significant, that relates to the need to maintain stability. So this is also an issue that has been flagged for many, many years by the Auditor General, that the larger part of the problem that makes municipalities not to perform is the instability that is experienced at the leadership level. So you'll find that there's a high turnover in terms of the senior positions of the mayor, of the CFO, and that causes a lot of these problems, because no one is really held accountable, irrespective of the kind of excellent work that the Office of the Auditor General has been doing over the years.
Yeah, and you know, Professor, just yesterday when the Auditor General was giving her recommendation, she said, look, it's going to sound very familiar because the root causes remain the same. When we talk about some provinces where there are repeat, I'd like to say offenders, repeat municipalities who are constantly getting unqualified audits as well. She warned that we shouldn't get into this zone where we are okay with just getting an unqualified audit. But some of these metros that aren't getting, and these municipalities that aren't improving and that are repeat offenders as well, they have had, you know, for provinces like Limpopo, a similar leadership, the same political party leading. And then you've got provinces like Gauteng where there has been a revolving door. Do we see the difference in those provinces where The leadership has remained the same, regardless whether it's an ANC or DA leadership, or in provinces like Gauteng, where they are multi-party metro and leaderships.
So my view is that there's a gap between community, between citizens and leadership in governance. By and large, what has happened in both extremes is that the political elite has managed to actually make sure that they find ways where they can evade accountability systems that are in place. So you will find that there is a very close relationship between a political party and as a political party itself, as well as the leadership of those political parties in government. So it's always very difficult to say, where do we draw the line on what a political party should do and what a political party in government should do? And I think this serves well these kind of politicians who are very much interested in self-serving exercises rather than making sure that their interest actually goes there to be for the citizens and for the community. And this is why for these many years we do not see improvements, because nobody gets to be charged, convicted, and serve some prison terms. And because this is not happening, so we are not sending any message to anyone that if you play around with public resources, we are going to come after you. And it is high time, I think, that we find methodologies that can bring in a lot of interventions to tighten up and make sure that whether it's a politician, whether it's a public official or a municipal official, that they are held to account. And if monies are missing, because there are definitely signatures there, and that there are processes, and that those people are kept accountable. Otherwise, indeed, the situation will continue to perpetuate.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your insights and your time. That is Professor Kedibone Phago.